All right, ladies and gentlemen. Hi. I'm at home once again. Like I said, here at some point in time, right now I am cooking at home, but at some point in time I'm probably going to be cooking in the foods lab at the high school. But today I'm gonna go ahead and do this demonstration at home. We are making our quinoa fried rice, which I'm actually gonna prep this today, and then we're gonna talk about this recipe in more detail today in class. As I mentioned, we're talking about our pasta and grain unit. And at this point in time, if you haven't already made your homemade pasta, you should be getting ready to make your homemade pasta. But we are gonna go ahead and we're gonna make this quinoa fried rice, okay? This recipe is a really great recipe. Oh my. Hi everyone, today we're gonna go ahead and make our quinoa fried rice. So I've already washed my hands, I've got my workstation pretty cleaned and set up, and I've got all my ingredients ready to go. As a reminder, at this point in time, you hopefully already prepared your basic pasta recipe, and I'm very excited to see pictures and videos of all of you prepping that. And to finish up our pasta and grain unit, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna make quinoa. Okay, quinoa. We are gonna be, there's a couple different varieties of quinoa. We are gonna be using our white quinoa here. Something I wanna note is that the quinoa you should be buying for this recipe is not the instant kind, okay? You should be buying your traditional quinoa. This kind my husband and I got at Meijer. There's a different brand at Walmart. You do not have to have the organic quinoa, but just any quinoa will work, okay? You just wanna make sure it's the traditional white quinoa, not the instant kind. And I actually have, I believe, if you give me one moment, I believe I have an example of the instant in my cabinet right now. One second. I do. So, you are looking for your traditional quinoa, okay? Your normal quinoa. This is the kind that you're gonna have to boil in hot water, in 2 cups of water or broth for at least 20 minutes, okay? If you buy any of these instant blends, this one actually came from Aldi. If any of you decide you really like the quinoa, the flavor of quinoa, I highly suggest getting some of this. This is awesome. This is an instant blend at Walmart, and it's actually a blend of quinoa and brown rice. So it's got more than just your quinoa in it, okay? Your quinoa, the grain itself kind of looks like little bird seeds. That's what a lot of students tells me it reminds them of. A lot of these instant packages here tend to be blended with some sort of rice as well, okay? I personally, when I eat quinoa, I normally like to have a blend of quinoa with the rice, which is why I have this instant version typically in my cabinet instead of the traditional quinoa, okay? It's kind of a texture thing for me. I like to have that rice as well. It's got a nice pleasant texture. So you wanna make sure you have the traditional quinoa when you're making this recipe. All right? And as we talked about in class, our quinoa should be pre-rinsed, but you should always go ahead and make sure you do rinse it off. You'll need about 1 cup of quinoa, some kosher salt, or just table salt is fine as well, some sesame oil, an onion, 1 carrot, 1.5 cups of frozen peas, 2 cloves of garlic, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, 3 large eggs, and then some green onion for garnish. If you're not a fan of green onions, you do not have to use green onions for this recipe, okay? This is just to go on top, to make it as a garnish, to make the dish look a little bit nicer. So, right after that, our very first step is we are gonna go ahead and start cooking our quinoa, okay? While our quinoa is cooking, while our quinoa is boiling, we are then going to prep our onions and carrots and garlic. That way we can cook them in a skillet until they're nice and tender. So I'm gonna go ahead And I'm gonna bring my quinoa and 2 cups of water to boil. Then reduce the heat. Oh my goodness, struggling to record today, guys. Then reduce the heat to simmer until all the water is absorbed. So it should take about 20 minutes. Okay. There are lots of different ways to make quinoa and to add some additional flavor to quinoa. As we mentioned in class, you are more than welcome to use just regular tap water or to use some sort of broth to give it a chicken or beef flavor. Normally if I would be making this, I'd probably use some sort of chicken broth. I like to cook my grains in chicken broth a lot of times for an added umami, kind of meaty flavor. That's my personal preference. But today I'm just using water. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead, and that is started. We're gonna bring that to a boil and then reduce it down to a simmer. All right. As we mentioned in class as well, if you want to pre-toast your quinoa, you're more than welcome to do that. If you want to add other seasoning to your quinoa, you can do that as well. I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm all for allowing you guys to be creative, especially when you're cooking at home. Okay. So, although it doesn't say so, I'm gonna go ahead and add a little salt and pepper to this while it's cooking to try to absorb that flavor. Just a little bit. Okay. Like we talked about in class. So, as I mentioned, while that is cooking, I'm gonna go ahead and we need 1 large onion diced and 1 large carrot peeled and diced. My husband bought me a very, very large carrot, and I'm gonna tell you what, I am not gonna use all of this carrot. This is a lot of carrot for me. I'm probably gonna use about half of this. But first things first, I have already pre-washed this. I do still need to peel my carrot. To peel your carrot, I would suggest using a vegetable peeler or a potato peeler, might be what you call it. At the moment, my potato peeler has disappeared. That happens on occasion in my kitchen. When that happens, instead of panicking and freaking out and thinking, I don't know what to do and I don't know how to peel a carrot without a vegetable peeler, I'm gonna be resourceful and I'm gonna use a spoon to peel my carrot. Okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the edge of my spoon and firmly press down on my carrot to take that peel off my carrot, that outside portion of my carrot off that I don't want. Okay? Just like this. If at any point in time there's a recipe that you're making that says you need a specific tool to do something and you don't have that tool, don't freak out, okay? Like I said, if you don't have a potato peeler, that's fine. I normally like to peel my potatoes by hand with a paring knife. That's how I normally peel my potatoes. I don't normally use a potato peeler. So the only time I really have issues is if I need like a carrot peeled. And like I said, what I can do is rather than using a vegetable peeler, I can always use my spoon. It works just as well, okay? There's a lot of fun kitchen gadgets out there that they're kind of cool and make your life a little bit easier, but they're not always a necessity, right? If you don't have them, you don't have to go out and run and buy one all the time. Having a vegetable peeler, having a potato peeler, those are great, but they're not a requirement. It's not something you have to have, okay? As long as you have a spoon and a good chef's knife, you can do a lot of things, okay? As long as you have some of those basics, a skillet, a large pot, a chef's knife, you're good to make a lot of things, okay? You don't need all those fancy tools. So, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna clean up this a little bit. But as you can see, I was able to peel my carrot, no problem at all. Didn't take very long at all. Took probably just as long as I would have if I had the vegetable peeler. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and clean that up a little bit. mention, I'm not gonna use this whole carrot. That's a lot of carrot for me. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna cut this carrot in half. And we're just gonna use half the carrot. All right. I'm gonna take the larger half. That's gonna be a little bit easier for me to use. Goodness. All right. So I want all of you to think back to Foods 1 when you practice your knife skills. We are gonna practice our knife skills again. As a quick refresher, I like my fingers, okay? I wanna make sure that my fingers aren't spread out like a squid. I want them kind of curled back, more like a spider or like a tiger claw, okay? So, I want to make sure my fingers are curled back at all times when I'm handling my knife. When I'm holding my knife, my thumb and my pointer finger should be right here towards the edge of the blade, towards the handle, okay? My other fingers just wrap around the handle. So when I'm holding my knife, I'm going to be using my wrist with a rocking motion, and the only parts that are really holding onto that knife are my thumb and pointer finger. The rest of my fingers just kind of wrap around it. I'm not gripping my knife really tightly. Okay, if I grip my knife really tightly like this, I'm not going to be able to really maneuver my knife the way I want to. Okay, it's going to be a little bit more challenging for me, and it requires a lot more effort. Makes your arm really, really tired if you're chopping like this. Okay, so you need to make sure thumb, pointer finger, and they wrap around. Okay. Other hand, you want in the claw shape, like a tiger claws. Okay. For my carrot is round. That makes it a little challenging to work with. So there's two things you can do. When you have round objects like this, especially carrots, you want to do your best to make sure there's a flat edge that when you're dicing your carrot. Okay, that way it remains stable on your cutting board and doesn't just slip around everywhere. Because if I try to cut this right now, there's a good chance my knife's gonna roll everywhere and I might accidentally slip and cut myself. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna cut off the end of my carrot that I don't want. Okay. And then you have two options. You can either cut off a small portion here on the side, or you can go ahead and try to cut the carrot in half. So I'm gonna stabilize my carrot on either side. Okay, just like this. And I'm gonna cut my carrot in half. Awesome. So I now have a flat edge for my carrot, and it's not gonna roll around everywhere. Okay. No matter what size carrot you're using, it's always a good idea, instead of starting off with that great big long carrot, is to cut it in half or cut it into thirds. That way it's a little bit easier for you to cut off those smaller pieces in order to stabilize your carrot. So my recommendation would be, no matter what size your carrot is, to plan on cutting it in half or cutting it in thirds. Okay? That way you can go ahead and cut your carrot in half so you have that flat edge there to stabilize it on your cutting board so it's not sliding around. All right? So from here, once again, you gotta think a little bit back. Foods 1, I'm gonna dice my carrot. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna cut my carrot into julienne strips and then into a kind of medium-sized dice. I don't want them super small. I want a decent-sized dice. Okay? So for my julienne strips, keep my fingers curled back best I can. These are not gonna be perfect strips. Like I said, I'm gonna do my best with my rocking motion with my knife. Okay. If my carrot is really, really thick, this one's okay. Let's see. My carrot's really thick. I'm gonna try to cut it one more time. Get another strip there. Okay. Try to make them all as even as possible. This carrot's kind of funky shape, so it's not very even. But got a couple strips here. Keep my fingers curled back, that rocking motion. I'm gonna make sure that I'm not perpendicular to the cutting board, because that's gonna make me really tired too. And a lot of times what happens if you're perpendicular to the cutting board, you have a tendency to look over your knife and then your knife's not straight and your cuts are gonna be off. So I'm gonna come in a little bit of an angle, rocking my knife back and forth, slowly pushing my carrot through. Get a kind of medium to large size dice here. Nothing too fancy. Your goal is to try your best to make sure your carrot pieces are all about the same size. That way they cook evenly, okay? So same thing. This carrot is a bit of a pain. Okay. This carrot right here is pretty thick, so I'm gonna go ahead and flip it on its side again. Cut it once more. Same with this one. Just like I said, this carrot's kind of a funky shape. That's why it's taken me a minute. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and finish cutting these up and then we'll move on to our onion, okay? Okay, let's go ahead and start on our onion. So for our onion, once again, what I like to do when I'm starting off cutting onions is I find the non-root end. So this right here, this is your root. Whenever you're dicing onions, you want to do your best to keep this intact, okay? Because this will help you as you're dicing your onion. If you cut this off, your onion tends to fall apart on you and makes it a little bit more challenging to dice. So go ahead and try your best to keep this root end intact here. And then I'm gonna go ahead and cut off this other end, okay? Our onions have a skin on them that we'll have to peel away before we continue to dice them. But what I like to do first to kind of help me when I'm peeling my onion is to cut off this non-root end, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead, fingers curled back, do my best. My knife clearly needs sharpened. Goodness. I have a flat edge here now. And then rather than trying to peel my onion like this, I'm gonna go ahead and cut this in half and then peel my onion. That'll make things even easier. When I cut my onion in half, I'm gonna keep that root end intact, like I said. I'm gonna do my best to just cut in the center of it, okay? Try my best to cut my onion in half exactly. Awesome. See, I can keep that, kept that root end intact there. And then I'm gonna peel that outside layer, the outside skin off. I have a trash can over here, that's why I keep walking away. So I'm gonna go ahead, peel that outside skin off. If I need to take one of those first layers of the onion off, that's okay. That should come off nice and easy now, rather than having to like struggle to get it pulled off. I've seen with several students that struggle peeling onions. Cutting your onion in half like that to start off with is a great way to cut down on that issue. So, it says that I need 1 large onion diced. So you should be using all of this onion. I'm probably only gonna use half for right now, just because it's just my husband and I. This recipe is supposed to make 4 servings, and we don't need that many servings of quinoa. So I'm just gonna do half of an onion right now. For my onion, like I said, review of knife skills a little bit. Hopefully in foods when you practice dicing onions. If not, this is a great time to practice it, okay? Dicing onions is a very important skill to have. Onions are used in a lot of recipes. They are very, very flavorful. My apologies, my dogs are all waiting for me to drop something. Apparently they're all hanging out. But onions are used in a lot of dishes, okay? So this is a really important skill to know how to do properly and accurately. So with my onion, I told you I wanted to keep that root end intact. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna keep using my claw here, my little tiger claw. I'm gonna start off by making a few horizontal cuts into my onion. When I cut into my onion, I wanna make sure that I don't cut all the way to the end, okay? If I cut all the way to the end, my onion's gonna fall apart, okay? And it's gonna make it very challenging for me to dice it. It's gonna take me a lot longer to dice it than to do it the way that I'm gonna show you. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna make a few horizontal cuts, keeping my knife back, trying to keep my knife as level as possible As I mentioned earlier, you should be kind of straight up and down, cutting at an angle. You want to keep your knife level, and you shouldn't be bending down looking to make sure you're not cutting yourself, okay? With your knife skills, checking on our quinoa. It's getting there. It's absorbing all that water. Okay? It's gonna have a little bit of time left still. But it's getting there for sure. It's looking pretty good. Okay. Chefs that have great knife skills treat their knife as just an extension of themselves. They trust that their knife's gonna go where it's supposed to go. A lot of times people cut themselves because they don't trust their knife and they're not confident in their knife skills. So, turn it down just a hair more. Don't bend down to try to see where your knife's going. You need to trust that your knife is making those straight cuts that you need to. A lot of times when you bend down, that's when your knife starts to move on you. So I'm gonna go ahead and make a couple horizontal cuts, probably 2, 3. Okay. Just like that. And I didn't cut all the way through my root end. And now I'm gonna make several vertical cuts. The amount of vertical cuts you make will help determine the size of your dice for your onion. So I'm gonna go ahead. Quinoa's just about done. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna make several vertical cuts here. Keeping my fingers curled back and making sure that I'm not cutting through that root end. Not yet, okay? Just like that. Now to finish dicing our onion, I'm then, with a rocking motion going down, gonna finish cutting my onion across, okay? And when I cut my onion across, it's gonna make that wonderful dice that I'm looking for. Just like that. Okay. Awesome. Just like I said, it's really important to keep your fingers curled back. You wanna dice as much of this onion as you can. Sometimes there at the end, you're gonna get some weird pieces like this. You can just go back through and dice them to the appropriate size. It happens. And if you have a little extra, that's okay. That you can't quite get diced the right size, that's okay. Don't worry about that. All right. So, we've got our carrot. We've got our onion. Next on our list of things to cut, I think we just have our garlic. We've got 2 cloves of garlic. So, got a bowl over here off to the side that I'm putting all our veggies in. So for our garlic, whew, onions are strong. For our garlic, this is a head of garlic, okay? This is a head of garlic. Each head of garlic has several cloves of garlic. To access those cloves, you have to peel your garlic. Okay, so I'm gonna do my best to kind of start with my thumb, just kind of pushing on it, take some of that peeling off. And as you can see, as I do that, I have some cloves of garlic that are now being exposed. Okay, so I need, according to this recipe, 2 cloves of minced garlic. So I need 2 of these. Got 2 cloves here. These cloves have an additional outside peeling that I have to take off. To take that off, easiest way to do so is to take my knife, lay it flat on top of my garlic, take the palm of my hand, and hit down on my garlic clove to smash it a little bit. Okay, that's the easiest way to peel my garlic. So, keeping my fingers back, my knife flat, I'm gonna take the palm of my hand and smash down on my knife, okay? Very firm, just like that. That way I can take that peel, that garlic will come right off. All right. To mince my garlic, I'm gonna keep my fingers curled back the best I can. Once again, I'm gonna cut my garlic into small slices, go back through with my knife, do a little bit of a dice, and then I'm gonna run my knife back and forth to continue cutting my garlic into small pieces, okay? As I'm doing this, I am holding my knife steady with my fingers, okay? To help me kind of rock my knife back and forth. I'm not pushing on my knife really hard. I'm just holding it steady, okay? I'm just holding my fingers there, that way my knife doesn't go anywhere. If I try to do it like this, it tires my arm out. And and I end up making much larger cuts than I need to, okay? I end up, goodness. I'm losing the word, ladies and gentlemen. That rocking motion I make ends up being much larger than it needs to be, which tires me out a lot faster, okay? Compared to, I do it just like this, so. All right. Now that we have our onion, carrot, and garlic prepped, our quinoa looks pretty good. So let me go ahead and wash my hands real quick, and then I'll show you guys what the quinoa looks like. So our quinoa is cooked for about 20 minutes and it's absorbed all of that water. And right now I'm just kind of fluffing it with a spoon. As you can see, it no longer looks like those bird seeds like we talked about earlier, okay? It's kind of puffed out a little bit, if you can tell, okay? So this is cooked. You could eat this as is. You could throw some veggies on here and just eat it. Okay, it is good to go. You can add whatever you want to it. We're gonna go ahead and take it a step further though, and we are going to stir fry it with our vegetables. So I'm gonna go ahead, and it says our next step, in a large skillet over medium-high heat, we're gonna heat some oil, add our onion, carrot, and peas, and cook until tender. It should take about 8 to 10 minutes. Then add our garlic and soy sauce and cook until fragrant, about a minute more. Then we're gonna crack our egg in and scramble, and then stir in our cooked quinoa and let it heat through. So, I have a large skillet here that I'm gonna use. However, if you have a wok at home, you're more than welcome to use a wok, okay? So, a wok. This one I actually need to get rid of. I just got a new one for Christmas. This one's got some rust on it, as you can see. So I need to toss this one. This is not good to cook with. But my new one, I believe, is currently in the box, and I haven't got it out just yet. But a wok. Difference between a wok and a skillet. A wok is like a large bowl with a handle, okay? It's got these larger sides that when you're stir frying in a recipe, allows you to push up the ingredients that you're cooking off to the side that don't need to be on the direct heat source. So as I'm finishing up my carrots and as I'm finishing up my onions, I can start pushing those off to the side and put all the other ingredients that need to be on the direct heat source right in the center there. So, like I said, this one clearly I need to get rid of. I just haven't yet. I've got a new one that I got for Christmas that I need to pull out. So because, like I said, this one I need to get rid of because of the rust, I'm going to use my skillet instead. I would highly recommend for this recipe, use the largest skillet that you have because you're going to be putting your quinoa, your carrots, your onion, your garlic, and a whole bunch of and eggs all into this skillet at once to cook. Okay, so I am going to go ahead. We're going to heat this skillet up, and I'm going to add a tablespoon of sesame oil. We are cooking with sesame oil. If you do not have sesame oil at home, that is perfectly fine. You can use canola oil or vegetable oil. That will work as well. So I'm going to go ahead. It says we need about a tablespoon of sesame oil. I'm going to measure out about a tablespoon here. And then it recommends that you save a little bit extra to serve on top for a little bit of added flavor. Set that off to the side for right now because I'm going to use that tablespoon later. And I am heating my oil up on a medium to medium-high heat. Okay? About a medium to medium-high heat. I don't want to heat it up on high. If I heat it up on high, my oil is going to heat up too quickly, and then it's going to get too hot. And it's going to give my vegetables and everything else a very off flavor. Okay? And there's a good chance that they're just going to burn. So I'm gonna be patient and I'm gonna heat them up slowly on that medium-high heat. So, as I mentioned, this recipe is really versatile. If you wanted to, if you didn't want to use quinoa, you could use rice. Or you could use, you could try couscous if you wanted to. There's all sorts of grains you can use instead of quinoa in this recipe. My recommendation would be to use quinoa or a combination of quinoa and rice. If you are not a fan of carrots and if you're not a fan of peas, you could always add different vegetables instead of carrots or peas to this recipe as well. When I make fried rice, I like to add carrots. I also like to add broccoli, or sometimes I'll add bell pepper to mine. So before I forget, let's see here. Awesome. I have my peas. I'm gonna go ahead and add my onions and carrots. My skillet feels nice and hot. I'm gonna go ahead and add my onions and carrots to this. Oil. My apologies about my dogs. They're being loud and obnoxious right now. And then my recipe says that we need, I believe, 1.5 cups of peas. Yeah, 1.5 cups of frozen peas. I think I'm going to use just 1/2 cup because like I said, I'm making this a little bit smaller for my husband and I, and we don't need quite that many peas with everything else we have going on. So I'm gonna go ahead and add my peas in there. Awesome, awesome. Like I said, I've only added, instead of using 1 whole carrot and 1 large onion, I've only added half of that. And we have quite a bit of veggies in here still, okay? While these are cooking, I'm gonna go ahead and add a little salt and pepper to season them, to make sure that everything tastes nice and flavorful. I'm just adding salt and pepper. If you wanna add a little crushed red pepper flake or crushed red pepper flake, sesame seeds, chili powder, try to make it spicy, you're more than welcome to do so. I will not stop you from trying that. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and add a little salt and pepper now. We're also gonna add a little salt and pepper here towards the end to help ensure that we've got all the right, to help season it. My goodness. Cannot talk today, guys. So we're gonna let this cook for about 8 to 10 minutes. Okay. Whenever it's ready, whenever I'm ready to add my garlic and soy sauce, I'll go ahead and we'll start back up. But right now, this is what it looks like. Okay. So we're gonna go ahead and let this cook down for about 8 to 10 minutes. All right. So like I said, I've went ahead and I've let this cook down now. And as you can see, our onions are starting to get kind of translucent. Our carrots, if I push down on them, they're getting pretty soft now. I'm able to easily kind of squish them. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead, and these are gonna continue to cook as I'm adding all my other ingredients. So I'm gonna go ahead, and my next step is I'm gonna add my garlic and my 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. So got my garlic already minced here. Go ahead and add that. Like I said, yours, when you make it, if you make the full recipe, you should have a lot more onions, a lot more carrots, a lot more peas. My husband and I, we don't need that much. So I've put in about half of that normal amount, but you guys should have a lot more than that. Put my garlic in here. I need 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. And then I'm gonna cook the garlic and soy sauce for about a minute until it becomes nice and fragrant. So it's nice and smelly. It smells like the soy sauce. It smells like stir fry. Now while I'm doing that, while that's cooking, I'm going to go ahead and talk to you about here at the end. Once this is done cooking, I'm going to add my eggs and scramble them for about 2 minutes, then add my quinoa. And then to finish off this recipe, I'm going to add a little bit of green onion on top for garnish. So this is what your green onion looks like. Okay? You've got your white kind of bulb end down here with some roots. And you've got this green end here. You're able to use the entire green onion, okay? A lot of people tend to use just the green part, but you can use the entire green onion. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna cut off these little root pieces, and I typically like to cut off a little bit of the end as well, just because it tends to get kind of smushed and it's not as good. So I like to cut off both ends just a little bit. And then for my green onion, I'm gonna practice those knife skills once again. I'm gonna go ahead and just cut them into kind of some pretty circular rings. Okay. So keep my fingers curled back. Cut them into these nice smaller pieces. I don't want great big chunks of green onion. I want them fairly small. Making sure to use that rocking motion the best I can. And I've got some garnish here ready to go whenever everything's done. So, my carrots and onions and peas are nice and flavorful. They've got that garlic there, they've got the soy sauce. I'm gonna go ahead, kind of push everything off to the side. Like I said, if I had my wok ready, my wok would be perfect for this because I'd be able to push this off kind of on the edges a little bit more, where that heat wouldn't be directly on everything. The hottest part of my skillet is that center part there, okay? So that's why with woks, it's nice to be able to kind of push them off to the edge. So that everything that's cooked here will kind of continue to stay warm, but won't be cooking, won't continue to cook at a high heat, where everything could potentially burn. So I'm gonna go ahead and push these off to the edges the best I can. I have 3 eggs already cracked here in the bowl. And then I'm just gonna add them in here. All right. Once again, add a little salt and pepper. Make sure everything's nice and seasoned. I would use your salt sparingly for this recipe because you do put a lot of soy sauce in here. So you want to make sure that soy sauce already is very salty. So you want to make sure not to add too much salt. Otherwise, this recipe is going to be overly salty and it's going to burn your taste buds. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead, scramble my eggs in the center. Kind of leaving all my veggies off to the side for right now. When I make fried rice or when I make a stir fry kind of like this, I like to put my eggs in the center, kind of let them set up for a little bit, then crack the yolks and kind of scramble them. And then let them kind of sit for a minute. And then slowly add my veggies in. Okay, that way I get larger pieces of eggs and it's not all just like veggies coated in eggs. So, that's kind of what it looks like right now. You can see, starting to kind of cook a little bit, starting to kind of scramble, got some more pieces a little bit more. I'm gonna slowly start pulling in some of my veggies here. Awesome, awesome. Once I get all this combined, I'm gonna add my quinoa. Now I've got some lovely little pieces of egg. Kind of nice and mixed up. I'm gonna push everything off to the side again. And like I said, when I make a stir fry, this is kind of how I like to do it. I like to push everything off to the side and slowly add one ingredient at a time. I'm not going to put all of that quinoa in there right now, just because I didn't put as many veggies. If you wanted to make this in smaller batches, you're more than welcome to, okay? You do not have to make a really large batch of this. If you don't have a skillet that's large enough to hold all of this, you might want to make a smaller batch. You might not want to make all of this quinoa and all of these veggies all at once. This is also a great recipe. As we mentioned, this is a vegetarian recipe, okay? There is just carrots, peas, and onions in here. You are more than welcome to add meat to this if you wanted to. If you wanted to add some chicken, if you wanted to add some steak, you wanted to add some shrimp, this would be a great recipe. All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this point in time, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna finish plating my quinoa fried rice. My egg is cooked, my quinoa is thoroughly heated up. It's got lots of colorful veggies in it. Like I said, I might put some bell pepper in there personally for me. This recipe is good to eat as is. It is also good to add shrimp, add chicken, or add some other sort of protein to it. If you like tofu, this would be a great recipe to add some tofu to. But I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna plate this up, probably for my husband, because he's been he's got the week off and he's been doing stuff in the baby's room and getting things ready there. If you hear any banging, that's what he's doing right now. For this recipe, the only other recommendations I have would be to add a little bit of those green onions, like I said, to kind of garnish it here up top. Add a little bit of extra color. And if you have a little bit of sesame oil extra, maybe adding a little bit of an extra drizzle of sesame oil on top. Just like that. Not a whole bunch, just a little bit. And there you go. And I was told, my husband did try it just a minute ago, and he said it was delicious, and he's very excited to finish eating this. So I hope you guys enjoy this. And I'm very excited to see all of your great pictures and all of your great videos of you prepping this for yourself. Okay? All right. Hope you guys enjoy.